Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, freedom for 21-year-old Israeli-American Eidan Alexander, held in Gaza for 584 days. And President Trump heads for a Middle East summit with leaders including Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Plus, a former Israeli intelligence officer says the warning signs for October 7th were in plain sight on Palestinian TV months before it happened. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Israel rejoiced this week over the release of the last living American-Israeli hostage, Eidan Alexander. President Trump says this goodwill gesture may help put an end to the war and return all of the living hostages and remains to their loved ones. Here's the latest on that and other news. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff came to Israel to facilitate the return of Alexander. The release came just before President Trump visits the Middle East this week. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office issued a statement about the release. The expected release of IDF soldier Eidan Alexander without anything in return will be possible due to the vigorous policy that we have led with the backing of President Trump, and thanks to the military pressure of IDF soldiers in the Gaza Strip. The announcement added that Israel didn't commit to a ceasefire or the release of terrorists, but only to a safe corridor for Alexander to be freed. It added that any future negotiations would come under fire, meaning the fighting in Gaza will not stop while the IDF prepares to expand the war.
You know, I would say that the entire game has changed, Chris. Up until now, over the last 20 months, our goal has been to try to deter Hamas, try to destroy them, but to be extremely careful around the hostages. And what this really resulted in was striking in and pulling back, striking and pulling back. And the problem is Hamas understood this right away.
Former IDF international spokesman Doron Spielman explained to CBN News while Israel is pursuing a new strategy.
What that means is the IDF pushes into Rafah, where we have very intense fighting, as I'm speaking to you right now in Rafah, with our brigades and with Hamas brigades in Rafah. We will hold that territory. As we move into the middle of Gaza, in the Khan Yunis, we will hold that territory to force Hamas to retreat to a smaller and smaller area where hopefully we can finish them.
The challenge, as always, since October 7th, is saving the hostages.
What we know, of course, is what they know and what we all know, is that they will use those hostages into the last minute, but our hope is by pushing them into an area they have no choice to go to, that's when we hopefully can bring these people home and finish with this.
In the meantime, the U.S. and Iran finished their fourth round of talks in Oman over Iran's nuclear program. While Iran's foreign minister says talks are moving forward, he emphasized that they will not agree to stop enriching uranium.
This is a right of the Iranian people that is not up for negotiation or compromise.
Witkoff maintains that Iran must dismantle its enrichment facilities, downgrade the enriched fuel, and ship it far away. He told Breitbart News an enrichment program can never exist in the state of Iran ever again. That's our red line. The IDF also sent an urgent warning Sunday to the Houthis in Yemen. An IDF spokesman announced on X that since the Houthis use their seaports for terrorist activities, those in those ports should evacuate and stay away from them until further notice. Just hours after walking free from the captivity of a Hamas dungeon in Gaza, Eidan Alexander enjoyed this emotional reunion with his family. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave credit for Alexander's release to President Trump and the IDF.
This was achieved thanks to our military pressure and the political pressure exerted by President Trump. This is a winning combination.
In his first message, Alexander thanked President Trump and wrote out, "Am Israel High, the people of Israel live." Alexander later spoke on the phone with the president.
And he's coming home to his parents, which is really great news. I mean, to me, it's big news. They thought he was dead, so that's sad.
Netanyahu also said he spoke to President Trump after what many are concerned is a growing disagreement between the two countries.
He told me, I am committed to Israel. I am committed to continuing to work with you in close cooperation to achieve all of our war goals, to release all the hostages, and to defeat Hamas. It goes together. The things are intertwined.
Still, some Middle East analysts see Alexander's release as a diplomatic victory for Hamas. While the terror group received no compensation, they say it succeeded in drawing the U.S. into pressuring Israel to end the war in Gaza. Netanyahu's office announced it's sending a negotiating team to Doha to see if a deal can be reached to release more hostages from Gaza. All this on the eve of a major push by the IDF to defeat Hamas, and as President Trump begins his visit to the region. President Trump arrived Tuesday in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and greeted by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The goal of the trip is a potential diplomatic and economic bonanza that could bring as much as $1 trillion in investment in the U.S. Regional leaders will participate in a summit Wednesday that may include Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. Some believe Crown Prince bin Salman may want to tie the establishment of a Palestinian state to normalizing relations with Israel. It's this focus on a Palestinian state, along with the lure of a massive economic deal, that concerns many Christian groups who support Israel. It's why the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem is putting out a call to prayer that says, in part, we are calling on committed Christians everywhere to set themselves aside for more focused prayer over the coming days concerning the high-stakes diplomacy playing out before our eyes. This moment could bring great benefits for Israel and the entire region, or it could bring us closer to the dire prophetic judgment of Joel chapter 3. That passage scripture issues a warning about the consequences of dividing up the land of Israel. After decades of studying Palestinian culture, a former military intelligence officer believes he knows why Israel missed warning signs pointing to the October 7th massacre. He wrote a book, The Only Jew in the Room, to help keep that from happening again. Here's his story. For 24 years in Israel's military intelligence, Lieutenant Colonel Avi Shalev closely observed the daily life of Palestinian society. After retiring, Shalev continued his education by enrolling in an Arab Islamic college.
I learned how much I don't know about our neighbors.
Shalev wrote about the experience in a diary which he published as The Only Jew in the Room.
I was their first Jewish student ever to have registered to the college.
Shalev says this is in stark contrast with Arab Israelis.
Thousands of Arab Israelis study in Israeli universities in Hebrew.
His time there helped Shalev conclude that while Israel's intelligence agency had plenty of high-tech information, they lacked understanding.
When you come to assess your neighbors, okay, you need a lot of intel, but you also have to understand and assess this intel. And if you don't understand the mentality, the culture, the language, the religion, the narrative, the history of your neighbors, you'll find it very difficult to actually understand the intelligence that you have.
He believes Israel completely misread Hamas.
We know today that the IDF had the plan of 7th of October. It got many warning signs, and it misread them. And you know, the head of intelligence, Khalifa, said that even if somebody had told him on the 6th of October that this is going to happen, he says, I would have dismissed him.
Shalev says instead of hiding its intent, Hamas broadcasted it on Palestinian television.
2 years prior to the attack, Hamas published a TV series
called The Fist of the Free. It was viewed by millions of Arabs.
And on the 30th episode is the 7th of October. It's the attack on Israel. In May 2022, Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, saying this is exactly what we are going to do, and we're going to realize everything that you saw on this TV series in reality.
The program portrayed Palestinians working with Israelis as traitors.
Anybody who's invested doing business and having relations with Jews is a real villain.
And yet, Israel continued to increase work permits for Gazans, hoping jobs and money would result in peace. Instead of gratitude, Shalev says, Hamas showed contempt.
We hate doing business with the Jews. We hate being related to them. We hate sending our kids to their hospitals.
Before October 7th, 17,000 work permits had been issued to Gazans to work in Israel. Shalev says Israel's intelligence never dreamed the workers would want to jeopardize this opportunity.
They would never go and sacrifice everything they have because that doesn't make sense in our world. But Palestinians in Gaza, especially Hamas, was not thinking like that. It had a vision. It was thinking in religious, Islamic narratives.
The terrorists then targeted those Israelis most committed to making peace with Arabs.
Hamas attacked the most left-wing, liberal, progressive communities on the border who really went out of their way to assist Gazans.
He sees the heart of this failure being a cultural collision.
Israel is a far more modern society, individualistic society, where the locus of control is internal. So we internalize, in our mind, we think that we can change the world and we can be effective. The Arab is a very traditional, religious, Islamic, tribal society. They take their clue from the group. They're not analyzing the situation, so it doesn't really matter for them if it's true or false. If the context is favorable for the group, they're with it, and they're completely identified with the group policy or idea.
Shalev warns that unless Israel can bridge this cultural chasm, it will remain vulnerable.
I think following the 7th of October, Israel will change, especially in the military and the intelligence community, the way it trains its cadets, its officers, because we really need to understand Arabs better, understand the way they're thinking and they're seeing us.
As President Trump lands in the Middle East, many are talking about the prospects that Saudi Arabia might join the Abraham Accords. CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl tells us just what that alliance has meant since the October 7th war began in 2023.
When Hamas attacked Israel 19 months ago, no one knew how Arab nations would react.
I think a lot of people thought that after October 7th, it would be the beginning of the end of the Abraham Accords. And in fact, it's been the opposite.
Fleur Hassan Nahum is the Israeli Foreign Ministry's special envoy for trade and innovation.
About a month after October 7th, the Arab League met, and they wanted to pass 3 boycotts against Israel and 1 against the United States. And it was the countries of the Abraham Accords that, in fact, vetoed the boycotts that the Arab League wanted to pass on Israel.
When Iran launched some 300 missiles at Israel in April last year, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan all joined with the U.S. to defend Israel from the onslaught.
But what's really interesting about that is not that they helped, is that they admitted that they helped. Because in the Gulf, it's, rhetoric and reality can be two different things. But the fact that they came out and they said, yeah, we were helping Israel, we were on the side of Israel, that's momentous. That's progress.
When Iran launched a second attack a few months later, the Gulf states once again came alongside Israel with intelligence assistance, access to airspace, and other help.
So I think it's very clear that the Middle East is split into 2. The countries that want peace and prosperity and the countries that want radicalism and jihad. And it's very clear where the UAE and even Saudi Arabia is, and it's very clear where the Islamic Republic of Iran is.
Hassan Nahum said she can't predict what will happen with the negotiations between the U.S. and Iran.
But all of this is pushing the countries of the region that want peace and prosperity and want to push out the Muslim Brotherhood and the Shia fundamentalists.
The Abraham Accords are President Trump's legacy from his first term in office. Israel signed bilateral normalization agreements with the UAE and Bahrain in September 2020, paving the way for full diplomatic ties. It was the first agreement with an Arab state since the 1994 peace accords between Israel and Jordan. Later in 2020, Sudan and Morocco also joined the accords. Saudi Arabia has been the big question mark. Publicly, the kingdom has stated that Israel must commit to a Palestinian state before it will join the accords. However, Hassan Nahum says Saudi Arabia will likely join the accords to strengthen the alliance against Shia fundamentalists. But there are other reasons, like the changing nature of the energy industry.
They have this incredible 2030 vision that includes, phasing out fossil fuels because they know it's going to end, and they need innovation, green and clean energy. And who, of course, are the leaders of that in the world? Israel.
Hassan Nahum says it's too soon to tell if the new leaders in Syria want to join the accords.
Any country that has wanted peace with Israel has found peace with Israel. Jordan, Egypt, the Emirates, Morocco, Sudan, Bahrain, any country that has said we're ready to make peace, Israel is ready to make peace with that country. And so I don't think we're going to not make peace if it's genuine and if it's sustainable and it's real.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
24 years as a Mossad undercover agent have given Oded Elam an insider's perspective on terrorism and jihadist thinking. He's currently a writer and researcher with the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. We asked him about Iran and other subjects at a conference hosted by the Jewish News Syndicate. How would you describe the threats to Israel right now?
The threat to Israel right now is mainly it comes from our most violent, stubborn, and I would say even sophisticated adversary, which is Iran. And Iran is the composer of whatever we see here. Although they do not take credit for any sort of any kind of attack that is initiated by proxies and like Hezbollah or like the Houthis or the Hamas and so on. And lately, what we have seen is something which quite unique, is an effort made by Iranians to recruit Israelis as assets or as spies or even as operators to initiate terror acts. And when I'm talking about Israeli citizens, I'm talking about Jews. This is something that we haven't seen before on such a scale.
What are your thoughts about the current negotiations going on between Iran and the U.S.?
Now we are focusing mainly on the nuclear apparatus. And even that, we are not talking, the Americans, not Israel, not talking about annihilating the whole nuclear program, but sort of maintaining the same deal that had been conducted during Obama days in 2015, which Trump withdrew from that deal, but with a little bit more, I would say, some camouflage and flying colors, and maybe add some ingredients into it. But basically, it seems that they are going to the same deal, but of course with some added value, and this is getting a little bit farther from what we had expected. And one of the reasons that I see is there is no real, I would say, intelligence work that support the American administration, especially the Special Envoy Stephen Witkoff. I'm not that sure how much he has the ability to understand the complexity of the whole process. He doesn't come from this work. His mindset is like a businessman. And it's not the language that we speak here in our neighborhood. This is a tough neighborhood. We speak completely different language here, and I'm not sure he speaks the language. And this is something that bothers me regarding where we are going from here. The Iranian would prolong the talks for years.
What can be done? What could Israel do? And can Israel have the capability unilaterally by themselves to destroy Iran's nuclear program?
Israel does not have the capability of completely annihilating and destroying the Iranian nuclear program independently, simply because the fact that they are hidden and stashed in mountains, and we don't have the ammunition and the capability of reaching those places and causing such a damage that will actually last long and destroy the 10,000 centrifuges that are supposedly working. For that, you need a special ammunition. It's called the Moab. Only the Americans have this bomb. Only two aircrafts can carry it. One is the B-2, and the other one is another sort of aircraft. And Israel doesn't have it. So, in order to inflict a damage that will be sustainable on the Iranians, Israel will have to use a combination of air power and boots on the ground. And this is very complicated business. We did it in Syria about 8 months ago. We destroyed CERS, the special research center. And we did it according to newspapers with commando forces. But Iran is a different ballgame. It's a very, very dangerous and risky mission to send enormous amount of troops on the ground to do whatever we have to do.
How would you describe the situation in Gaza right now?
On one hand, we want to annihilate completely the military capabilities of the Hamas and also their governing of Gaza. The Hamas are willing, by the way, to give the government name to anyone who just want to do it. And all the suggestions that are being floated right now in the air all leads to the same conclusion. And this is something Israel cannot tolerate under no circumstances. We cannot let these jihadic fanatics maintain their power in Gaza, because anyone who will try to rule Gaza, we have to confront with them at the end of the day. Anyone. They will actually dictate everything.
When a child develops a debilitating condition, it can affect the whole family. Thanks to the support of CBN partners, CBN Israel was able to arrange medical help for one Arab family facing just that situation. Here's their story.
Amjad and Mohammed live in Hebron in the southern West Bank. When they realized their son Jamal kept squinting, they were worried.
We noticed that he had difficulty focusing on objects, and he was bullied by other children because his eye did not look normal.
A clinic diagnosed Jamal with strabismus, a degenerative crossed eyes condition that left untreated can permanently affect his vision.
The doctor suggested surgery, but our financial situation did not allow us to proceed with the operation. The economic situation in Hebron has been very challenging since the war started.
Then a doctor told them about CBN's sponsor program at a hospital in Jerusalem.
When the hospital informed us that we would be sponsored and the surgery costs would be covered, we were overjoyed and extremely grateful because we had thought about taking out a loan for the procedure.
There was no way we would have been able to afford this on our own, but I was ready to do whatever it took to make sure my son could get this surgery.
CBN Israel sponsored the surgery and helped the family travel from the Palestinian Authority to the hospital. The surgery was a success, and thanks to you, CBN Israel also provided Jamal a new backpack and school essentials for the new school year.
Jamal is happy because now he will be able to participate fully at school, become even smarter, and feel confident around other children. We're so grateful for the efforts of CBN and the generous people who made this surgery possible. We are all human beings under God's mercy.
What an encouraging story, and a big thank you to CBN partners. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can access CBN content through our CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blast so you can receive information on breaking news. And please keep praying for Israel at this critical time, for wisdom for our leaders, for IDF soldiers, and all those caught in harm's way, and for all of the hostages to come home safely. I'm Chris Mitchell. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.